Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
So first of all, happy Valentine's Eve. Don't you think this would make great gifts to your beloved? Don't you think? It would be just a great, wonderful gift to your beloved. The way this will work is that Muriel and Sally will come out. They'll read a little bit and discuss, so it should be an amazing time. We're very happy to have Sally Wen-Mao here. Sally Wen-Mao is the author of a previous poetry collection, Mad Honey Symposium. She has received fellowships from the New York Public Library, Cullman Center, the George Washington University, and Kundiman. The book is made possible through a partnership with the College of St. Benedict and honors the legacy of S. Mariella Gable, a distinguished teacher at the college. And Muriel Leung is from Queens, New York. Her writing can be found or is forthcoming in the Collegist, A Fairy Tale Review, Ghost Proposal, Jellyfish Magazine, Inner Rupture, and others. She is a recipient of a Kundiman Fellowship and is a regular contributor to the Bloodjet Writing Hour poetry podcast. She also edits poetry for Apogee Journal. Currently, she's pursuing her PhD in creative writing and literature at USC. Please welcome them both, Sally and Muriel.
Thank you so much for having us both. Obviously, it's an incredible honor to be talking with Sally today. Sally and I have been friends for a while. I always debate about which anecdote to share about Sally. But the first time I actually interviewed Sally was many years ago for her first book, Mad Honey Symposium. As you can see that there's a really great track record of really amazing covers coming from Sally. And I just remembered that like one of the first times I knew that like I love Sally was when we were in this interview and we were talking about poetics, and then I don't even remember the context of it, but all of a sudden Sally was just like, yeah, and so I just decided to go to Greece, and then there were these handsome men feeding me grapes, and I was just like, I don't even remember what the context. I was just like, this is amazing. I love you. And so I think the spirit of that moves through her work. So I was thinking about what to read in honor of Sally today, and I wanted to read this just excerpts of this essay, a really old essay about women of color friendships. I think that's some of the things I wanted to talk about today with her and OCULUS. The impossibility of hyphen universes. Forgive me, I did not know how fast you were decomposing. Should not have left grammar up to chance. First mistake. The second, not knowing how to reconcile a body that can somersault through the universe at once whole and a person divided. Though you make mistakes too. When you were 8, your grandmother brought home 10 mangoes in a wooden box and let you eat 6 of them in one sitting. When she brought you to school the next day, you pretended you could not understand her when she spoke to you in a dialect that reminded you of vowels crashing together like falling wind chimes. She clubbed your face in front of a dozen red-faced children, and you felt you deserved it. The slap was a brilliant call to order, because up until that moment, you were a set of floating halves, and your tongue always managed to betray you. There was a lesson in that, I think, you recounted sometime during our college years. The last word formed a tiny hill in the air. We were always swapping stories on your bed, or my bed, or by the 7-Eleven cherry slushy machine. Because we were always between one point and another, we liked the comfort of fixed places. Maybe that is why for us airports feel so much like portals of impossibility. Airports present themselves as fixed places in which planes of varying origin and destination points come and go. They have the appearance of fixity, but this is what they leave out. the loss that had housed itself in your body from the many times you stood at either ends of the security checkpoint, watching someone you love eventually merge with the vanishing point until they disappeared altogether. The day we brought your husband to the airport and stood together watching him undo his shoelaces and then place his thick boots in oversized bins with the slowness you two had practiced and promised each other, you turned to me and said, "Airports are the loneliest places in the world." But it was not always that way. Once you confused love for the taste of Toblerone bars because that was what your father brought home with him from airport shops. These were terrible chocolates, too hard for a child's teeth, and shaped with too many odd corners to bite off with one mouthful. Yet they arrived with your father's tobacco chin and leather jacket, and you felt the necessity of flight course through you. What we mean when we talk about inheritance is this. The immigrant, otherwise known as a body that is constantly arriving, becomes an agent of history. You were the product of war, and I was hapless with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. We were born anyway of variant circumstances, to and away from. Perhaps that was why the night your father let you sleep in his bed, you asked him about the time he tried to swim from mainland China to Hong Kong during the Cultural Revolution. You wanted to know what it felt like to be caught by the bright lights flashing from armed guards, to be sent away to a labor camp where every day his boot broke soil. While he kept his back turned to you, his silence pricked the air, and you never asked him again any more questions about that particular time in his life. In a way, this is an example of how falling apart precedes childhood. It is as if every time we revisit our respective lineages, we find a new way to articulate our origins or how we come to inherit the gene for breaking. Before your father, there was mine, and before him, my grandfather swam too, quickly and with the cold air whipping his back. Sarah Ahmed writes in Queer Phenomenology, "In the face of what appears, we must ask what disappears, which makes our current predicament seem like a terrible magician act. At our parents' insistence, we decided to be better against all measures. You stopped skipping school and made honor roll. I chased my brother up and down Utopia Parkway the 5th time he ran away from home and bought him Burger King and put him to bed. You translated report cards and teacher comments for your parents during school conferences. I stopped dating white boys and started studying harder in school. You got into graduate school and got married to a man in that order. I told my mother I was writing a book about us and our history. Together, we stacked our goals up high, and they became bragging rights for our families during gatherings. We had all the makings of an absolute whole. Still, at night sometimes, we are aware that gradually we have become more whole than flesh. It is a way in which I grapple with another naked body, whispering, 'Stranger, stranger,' all the while dreaming of an imperfect history. I never told you this because I was afraid that on the other side of this planet you were fashioning a similar lie. I should have known that you too are scaling the damp sheets and seeing ghosts. We told ourselves that we would never let anyone make us feel the kind of lonely we did not want to feel. I watched you substitute sex for all your versions of storm. You conflated body with rage and you threw yourself against a wall. You said you wanted to know what it would feel like to break yourself into a million pieces instead of someone else breaking you and then telling you what it would be like to be a million pieces. This you would do again and again until all 3 storms quelled in your heart. Now we are here again, and I am threaded together, but barely, and you are describing the sensation of your mouth drifting away from you with rapid, flailing hands. I know you are terrified of this new language. I am too. I want to talk about how we lose, the durability of other words that mean enough. I want to know that liberation is possible without the captivity of others. There goes your set of teeth, your bunion, the whites of your hair. Goodbye, ghost rib, and all the body's vacant lots. Let's be honest, you never had any use for these parts anyway. Start over, begin again. The universe folds in 2s, the universe folds in 3s.
Thank you so much, Muriel. That was amazing. Thank you all for being here. I feel very lucky to be here. And thank you for going out in the rain and to come here. I'll start with reading reading a poem called Occidentalism. A man celebrates erstwhile conquests, his book locked in a silo still in print. I scribble, make Sharpie lines, deface its text like it defaces me. Outside, grain fields whisper. Marble lions are silent yet silver-tongued with excellent teeth. In this life I have worshipped so many lies. Then I workshop them, make them better. An East India Company, an opium trade, a war, a treaty, a concession, an occupation, a man parting the veil, covering a woman's face, his nails prying her lips open. I love the fragility of a porcelain bowl. How easy it is to shatter like the Han Dynasty urn Ai Weiwei dropped in 1995. If only recovering the silenced history is as simple as smashing its container, book, bowl, celadon spoon. Such objects cross borders the way our bodies never could. Instead, we're left with history, its blonde dust. That bowl is unbreakable. All its ghosts still shudder through us like small breaths. The tome of hegemony lives on, circulates in our libraries, in our bloodstreams. One day, a girl like me may come across it on a shelf, pick it up, read about all the ways her body is a thing. And I won't be there to protect her, to cross the text out and say, go ahead, rewrite this. So this book, a large portion of this book is about or contains persona poems from the perspective of Anna May Wong, who is an LA native. So I figured I would read a few of these poems. The Toll of the Sea. And this is the first film that she starred in, and it was also one of the first films to have a Technicolor screen. So the two colors in the film were red and green, and then also black and white. And also it was a retelling of Madame Butterfly. The Toll of the Sea. Green means go, so run, now. Green, the color of the siren sea, whose favors are a mortgage upon the soul. Red means stop, before the cliffs jag downward. Red, the color of the shore that welcomes. White, the color of the man washed ashore, from his shirt to his pants, to his brittle shoes. White, the color of the screen before Technicolor. White, the color of the master narrative. Green, the color of the ocean. So kind, not leaving a stain on the white shirt. Green, the color of the girl, so kind. But why? She speaks, alone in my garden I heard the cry of wind and wave. In the green girl's garden, the stranger clamps her, asks, how would you like to go to America? A lie. Soaked in the red of the choke cherries that turn brown in the heat, red the color of the roses that spy, red the color of their fake marriage, white the color of the white man's frown. She asks, is it great lark or great sparrow you call those good times in America? Green the color of his departure, white the color of the counterfeit letters she sends to herself, white the color of their son, white the color of erasure, red the color of the lost footage, red the sea that swallows our stories, red the color of the girl who believed the roses, red the color of the ocean that drowns the girl, red the color of the final restoration. In every story, there is a Technicolor screen. black, white, red, green. In every story, there is a chance to restore the color. If we recover the flotsam, can we rewrite the script? Alone in a stranger's garden, I run. I forge a desert with my own arms. Blue, the color of our recovered narrative. Blue, the color of the siren sea, which refuses to keep a white shirt spotless. Blue, the color of our reclaimed Pacific. Blue, the ocean that drowns the liars. Blue, the shore where the girl keeps living. There she rises on the opposite shore. There she awakens, prismatic, childless, free. Shorn of the story that keeps her kneeling. Blue is the opposite of sacrifice. And I will read this poem. It's called, the series of poems with Anna May Wong, I imagine her with a time machine. So she was a Hollywood actress from the 1920s. That was kind of her heyday. And I imagine how she would respond to films that come out after she dies. So this poem is called Anna May Wong Has Breakfast at Tiffany's. In Santa Monica, the sunrise has this way of emptying everything inside you. I visit my future deathbed. It's February 1961, and I watch myself sleep. Dawn, outside my window, date palms sway, and lovers in blue Corvettes make their morning getaways. There will never be another breakfast. I die of a heart attack. Perhaps the night never pauses its seesaws. Perhaps I resign myself. Holly, go lightly. I can't go lightly. I must face my fates, deception, despair, death, because being seen has a different meaning to someone with my face. There will never be another breakfast. The French toast sits untouched with the blackberries. So I speed up time, reckless, toward a world where I don't exist. 8 months later, Audrey Hepburn walks down Fifth Avenue in a black Givenchy. This is the role I'd have died for. This is love, reciprocated. Beside her, Mickey Rooney plays Yunioshi, another tapeworm-eyed uncle with a limp. And I yawn at another generation of white men in yellowface. Before him, Roland Winters, Sidney Toller, Warner Oland. There is applause for them. The laughter is constant. I have played their daughters. They're pretty, but untrustworthy incarnates. There's no second generation for actors like me, but I've often pined for them, my progeny. Girls with tar black widow's peaks who stumble across spotlights in purple tights, taught to be meek. Girls who inherit my warnings, victories, and failures too. But for these girls, there will never be breakfast. I will travel through all time, searching for them. So, let's see. I guess I'll read this poem. So another person I kind of discovered in my research is Afa Moy, who was the first Chinese woman to ever come to the U.S. And this happened in 1834, and basically a couple of brothers who were merchants wanted to sell these objects that they were importing from Canton, and like a lot of like Oriental things, and they thought one way to market this would be to bring over a real live Chinese lady. So they found the daughter. They found somebody's daughter. I think she was 19, and they brought her over to New York, and they displayed her with a bunch of objects, and kind of like this glass window, and people came in and paid admission to see her, and they would just have her sit there eating with chopsticks, like eating rice with chopsticks, or like playing with an abacus. And it's really bizarre. Okay. The Diary of Afam Moy, number 8 Park Place, Manhattan, November 1834. The merchant brothers who brought me here, Freddie and Nate, knew I'd make it rain for them. In their eyes, I was a hothouse flower, a goddess of dollar signs. They decorated me with precious imports, baubles, yellow pantalettes, damasks. They placed me in a diorama of snuff boxes and silk. I was a breathing mannequin on my brocade throne. I couldn't believe how many people paid to see me. Banknotes dropped, jawbones dropped, and it was truly unnerving to watch the white people stare at me, mouths twitching in awe or pity or both. The men looked at my little feet, the women at my regalia. They wanted to see my feet uncovered. Can you believe the nerve? The podiatrists, the reporters begged for a glimpse. At the men, I snickered. At the women, I smiled. They swooned, blushed, as if they swallowed peppercorns. Their corsets were killing them. Heavens, a grotesquerie, their spines all crooked in their skeletons. I raised my brows ensconced in my civilized box. I counted the days with my abacus. Look, I was fucking bored. Was I the animal here, or were they? On my throne in lonely New York, I presaged my own descent. It started with a tongue, English, that curled its way into my mouth. They called me the Celestial Princess. I wanted them to bow down. So they did. They fell at my feet in penance or worship, a vernissage of my ancestor across my face. A slap. Okay, maybe I will fast forward. I'll switch it up a little bit. It's like kind of depressing. Let's see. Okay. So this poem is called Oculus. It's the second title poem in the collection. It's like the only poem that's like kind of not depressing. In this. Oh, okay. Maybe not the only one, but this is the last poem I kind of snuck into my book before I sent it, the final version, to my editor, because I wanted to kind of address the multiple definitions of oculus. So oculus is eye in Latin, but also it has, connotations of technology. You think of like VR, Oculus VR, and it also has the architectural definition of the window, this window on top of a dome into the sky. And I had no poem that kind of addressed this architectural definition, so I wanted to write something about that, because my first Oculus poem in the book kind of addresses the eye and the gaze, and also the camera, the eye of the camera. So, sorry, this is like a lot of story, but my friend. So I have my friend Angela Flournoy. While we were together at the Coleman Center, she got tickets to see Solange at the Guggenheim one day, and I just ended up going with her, and she said that there was like a dress code. We were all supposed to wear head to toe white, and then we went that day, and I wanted to write a poem about that because there's that famous oculus inside of the Guggenheim. And as I was writing the poem, it kind of occurred to me to like research this oculus, and it turns out that that very place, that the Guggenheim, is the very place that is the most photographed place in the world. Like according to like Google satellites or whatever. And I was like, that's crazy because like my first Oculus is like kind of about the camera. So anyway, sorry. It's a lot of stuff. Anyway, Oculus after Solange and Ode 2. May, pale peonies on the sills. From the steps of the New York Public Library, we hailed a taxi uptown. Past the Lions, past Patience, past Fortitude, to the Guggenheim where we sat, lotus style, wearing head-to-toe white, with a sea of others. They checked our phones and cameras at the door. All of us, a cloud condensing into ourselves, our forms, all city, all air, all sugar, all brown, all gold, have a seat. This is a cause for celebration. In many places in the world, it could have been a funeral. She appeared and she sang, descending down the spirals, the golden nautilus, past the skeletal Giacomattis, past the Duchamps, past the Modiglianis, under the centripetal glass, a single layer in the interior. None of our names were there. But our bodies, there they were. The most photographed place on earth was where we sat without cameras, except our eyes and our faces. It was spring. I was still hopeful. In my chest, what beat was cracked, but still salvageable. Cherry petals strewing my shoulders a whir. Cranes in the sky, cranes threaded on my dress. Golden tubas warbled as she danced. We looked up, and there was a skylight, a dome, the oculus at the center, through which all fears still burned and awed. And I will just read one more poem, and then we can kind of segue into conversation. I'm trying to decide between robots and Pokemon, and maybe I'll read this poem because you mentioned that you liked it, because it's I guess it's like somebody mentioned Valentine's Day, and I was like, okay, I'll read this Valentine poem. The 5 Faces of Faye Valentine, after Cowboy Bebop. Sorry, I tricked you there. 1. Her battle face is indistinguishable from her poker face. No savant dares to romance a face like that. Eyebrows, smirk, her mouth a lawless husk. Master swindlers beware. She will one-up with you with a flawless feint. A fugitive wind shrouds her name, her debt. There's a bounty on her swagger. 2. Girl, orphanage, accident, cryogenic sleep. Black dog serenades arouse her from tides. She doesn't recognize the child on the beta tapes, purple hair, white ribbons tying her features together. Jupiter jazz crows, her childhood, sleep until the earth disappears. 3. Woman, always running out of fuel, always straddling a slow horse, red tail, stranded in space with an unloaded pistol. This is what night imagined when it imagined a feral woman, jaw open and swiping, windward, loose claw, less sigh than scowl. The last civet in the universe gnashes her teeth against the glass. 4. Questioning. Is there mercy for a mercenary out there in the writhing galaxy where jetties disappear into harbors drained of antimatter? Bounty hunters lurk in the undertow. Evening larks afoot. 5. Conquest. Here's her blackjack, her torn jacket, her din, her turn, her ammunition, her departure. Unrecognizable cities rise from empty shuttles, husks for drones. See you, space cowboy, screams the Callisto moon. On nights when the wind strips the highway bare, only the stars hunt her down.
That was amazing. There's so many questions in my mind, and I feel like there are some that you may have already been asked before, but I think the first obvious question is because you read Anime Wong poems, and then you also read a poem about Afong Moy. I know you earlier today you were talking about how actually you wrote the Anime Wong poems before you did intensive research at the Coleman Center, where that's when you discovered Afong Moy. So could you talk a little about just like the research that you've done around these like historical Asian American women figures and what drew you to them enough that sorry. Yeah, like what drew you to these figures and how did it become a poetic project for you?
Well, I guess I first kind of encountered Anime Wong in an exhibition. I think it was the Museum of the Chinese in America in New York. There was this kind of image of her, like a photo, and then I think someone had written a dramatic monologue in her voice, and I was listening to it. So I did some internet research on her. I looked on Wikipedia, and then I went down the rabbit hole, and then I read a biography of her, and it was really fascinating to me because she was in such a unique position. There was no real Asian American movie stars until her, and not many since, right? So I was really interested in her subjectivity because she was such a freak in every sense of the word. Like, she was born in LA, but she'd never been to China until maybe her 30s, her early 30s, and I thought it was interesting because she had, like, there was that pressure because she chose to be an actress. There was that pressure to always, or that expectation to always represent like China, but she'd never been there. So I just thought her story was so interesting, but I wanted, when I started writing the poems, I just really imagined, like, like what can I do? What can I do beyond writing a persona poem? What can I do beyond just rewriting something that's already out there, like in her biography? And so I thought, like, with poems, you could do whatever you want. So, so I just started writing the time machine poems, and yeah, most of those poems were completed by the time I got to the New York Public Library. So I was in a fellowship there where it was kind of like a research and writing fellowship, and you had access to the archives. So once I got to the library, I found a folder, I found a whole folder with clippings about Anime Wong, and these are super old clippings, and they were like decaying as I was flipping through them. But I just, like, there was this rush. I felt like more connected because it was kind of like the decaying obit is right there in front of me. And with Afon Moy, I think I just read about her at some point, and I decided that I discovered at the library, and I did more research on her, and then upstairs I found a broadside that included an inventory of all the things that she was displayed with, and also it was an advertisement for her show, or for that show. So it was really fascinating for me to see kind of the primary documentation there.
Yeah, and I think for both of these figures who have really rich lives, and there's also there's like a swarm of like social political context with these two figures. I mean, I think this is like a lot of things that like writers struggle with all the time. Is like you do all this research, especially archival research. How does it become? At what point does it become poetry, right? And at what point did you decide, like, oh, it has to be a persona poem? This is the only form that I can embody this in. I have to list these objects. These are important to the poem. How do you decide how to translate that research into poetry?
Yeah. Well, with I I think I talked a little bit about the anime Wong poems and how I wanted to just do whatever I want with that, and have her be in a time machine and just kind of imagine how she would have reacted. And with her, it was kind of a different process because I there's a lot of material out there about her. So there's there's first person things that she wrote. She was a columnist at some point for a newspaper. So her voice is already kind of out there and circulating, and I felt like it was possible to write in persona, but what would make it more interesting is if I introduce something like impossible, essentially. With Afamoy, that I really deliberately wanted to write persona poems because every record that exists about her is written from the perspective of somebody looking at her or somebody consuming her or somebody like paying to look like to see her as like this object, this exhibition, and there were no accounts from her perspective. Like she was barely quoted, even though she had a translator with her for most of her tour. It just seemed like everything that was out there, like she had no voice, literally. So I wanted to write in persona so that to kind of imagine how like what her perspective would have been, because I mean, she might have been this like curious, like specimen from China, to the people who were like looking at her. But I was trying to imagine how like America looked to her. Like how strange and absurd, like America could be as a spectacle too. So I tried to be really deliberate with using persona, because I think it's not it's hard sometimes to kind of justify writing in persona, because I think there are ethics when it comes to trying to write from somebody else's perspective that's not your own.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and I think what makes it especially interesting, like this idea of spectacle, like that's so much of like that's what OCULUS like is. It's like about the looking and being looked at, and then rarely do like, especially when it comes to like Asian women, like the agency of Asian women, like there's rarely a discussion of what it means to look, for them to look back, for us to look back. So it's interesting that you highlighted these particular figures, and you also highlighted other Asian women who are not historical figures, but who have just like entered into your life in some other ways, and they also talk back. So I know that like we earlier today, I just really want to talk about like vengeance and Asian and like being Asian women and what does that mean? It's like, and I wouldn't say that like the voice necessarily is vengeful per se, but I do think there is a talking back that feels like like that, like the general like white reader wouldn't think is like Asian women don't do that. What is it about the kind of voice you want to embody, and what is it specific about, what's so specific about like vengefulness and like Asian women and talking back that feels particularly important to you in this book?
I think maybe in my experience, growing up Asian, like Asian American, as an Asian American woman, it's like a lot of shit gets repressed, right? like you're kind of taught to, I don't know, be like put on this like polite and like acceptable face, and I think in some Asian cultures that's very important, like having a face, like putting on a face, or like losing face is like the worst thing that you could do to your family. At least that's for me. I'm not speaking for everybody, but yeah. So I feel like in a way a lot gets repressed, and I think especially like anger, right? Especially when you feel this sense of injustice, what do? You have to kind of swallow it. Like the first poem I read, Occidentalism, it is kind of based on this experience I had. I was in the library and I saw a book on the shelf called The East, the West, and Sex, A History of Erotic Encounters, and I was like, holy shit, oh no. No, right? And then I pulled it out and I like started reading it. It was like just disgusting. It was like this like white man like justifying like all this like colonial conquest of like Asian women's bodies, and like it was like written in this very lurid way, and then I was so disturbed that I like borrowed it, and then I like wrote a Goodreads review of it. And it was like a really angry Goodreads review. It was like, and I didn't like, I couldn't even express my anger in like, so instead of doing that, I just like wrote, like I just copied a whole bunch of quotations and just put them on my review. And then like a couple years later, like some person created an account on Goodreads and wrote like a long comment on this review that I had written of this book. It was like 5 pages. It was just so long and rambling. And I just remembered the first sentence was, "Good grief, Sally, why so shrill?" and then it was like mansplaining point after mansplaining point, like this whole like long thing. And then I was like, why are you like, what's it to you? You know, like, are you the author? And and then like this like random commenter like denied that he was the author, but it was clearly the author because the handle was auteur, which is like French for author, right? So then he like got like, he picked a fight with me. He was just like, this is not like a your review is characterized entirely by emotion and not by like rational thought. I'm like, well, dude, it's Goodreads, right? It's Goodreads. Like what? Like, you think I'm like writing for like the like freaking like New York Times or something? I'm like. Anyway, yeah, I got in a fight, and yeah, and then I think about that policing, right? I think about that policing and how like good grief, Sally, why so shrill? Like you express emotion at being like objectified in this book. Like what's wrong with you? You know, like I feel like we get fed that a lot, and so. Yeah, and vengeance, like vengeance would be so sweet, wouldn't it? Like,
I mean, this book is kind of vengeance, and it's,
Yeah.
he wrote a whole poem about it, and it's like here forever. Goodreads can go away the next day. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, yeah. So I guess like at this point we can like open it up to you guys if you had any questions or whatever, like thoughts.
I'd be interested in hearing more about what you think the ethics of persona poems should be. I think that's a big, interesting subject. So, and I really enjoyed your reading.
Oh, thank you. The ethics of persona poems. So I think there's always kind of a responsibility when we are writing in a voice that's not ours, right? It's not our lived experience. Essentially a persona poem is just a lot of projecting, right? But I think like as long as we kind of understand that, like I remembered I was in a workshop. I think it was like at Breadloaf, and I had just workshop one of these like anime Wong poems, and somebody in the workshop was like, I don't think this is anime Wong. This is definitely like Sally Wen Mao. Like like talking through the conduit of Anime Wong, and then I realized that like that's kind of true, you know. Like I think for me, I wanted to write in persona because I could really, like, when I was reading her biography, I could really empathize with the things that she was feeling, like the otherness she felt, and like the trickiness of navigating these cinematic spaces, and like being a public persona, all of these things that were kind of feelings that I was interested in exploring. And I think the ethics of persona is like, are you exploiting your subject, or are you really trying to reveal the complexity of your subject? And for me, I hope that I was doing the latter, you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Quite articulated in my head, so this is for both of you really, but, so, you're writing about Anime Wong and some the history. What about your own history as poets? And what is that tradition you're looking at to inform, like, where you think you stand in that lineage of how, like, how is what is the sense of obligation that you feel to speak about that being Asian? What if you wanted to write about, shoes? So it's for both of you.
Have you written about shoes? I feel like you have written about shoes before too.
Probably.
Shoes and vengeance.
Probably.
What about you?
I think, yeah, I mean, I feel like very much like this book is definitely a lot more about kind of Asian American identity and navigating that than maybe my first book. Like my first book, I wanted to write about like honey badgers and like bees and like idiots who like consume poisonous honey just for the fuck of it. I think there is. I think yes, there is a lineage, and I think it really wasn't until I kind of exposed myself more to kind of this live, living, breathing like Asian American like literary community that I realized that I didn't have to really necessarily talk so much about Asian American identity, that it can be more of a conscious choice. Like I thought, like when I was in high school and writing poems, I thought that I had to write about the, like my grandparents and like, like these traumatic histories, and not that I think that that's important to write about that. And but then I also kind of realized once I was in kind of a larger Asian American literary community, I realized like how diverse it is. And there is a lineage, I think, like they talk about like what's the first generation, what were they writing about, what's the second generation, what are they writing about. But I think more fluidly in terms of like a community, and like your influences like range from like dead people to people who are younger than you. So for me, once I found myself in like spaces like Kundiman, the Asian American like poetry collective, I found out that I could really write about whatever weird thing I wanted. Really, like it doesn't matter, because all of us, like belong to something, even like we don't have to bear the burden of writing these like very complex traumatic histories all the time.
Yeah, I think that like specifically for like writers of color, the question of like who do you write for becomes an especially weighted question. And like I think to your like the example of like writing about shoes, I think in my experience in my MFA program, which was predominantly white, it was like anytime I wanted to write about flowers, it was always racially coded, no matter what. It was like it was never about just flowers. It's just like, oh, it's about like your relationship with your Asian mother and like like grief. And I was just like, no, it's just about a flower at the start. It's not about that, but so it's always coded in that way. And then I think you get, and when you consider your community as only just that, I feel like you get really stuck. And so I think like the spaces that Sally mentioned, like Kundima, like having other Asian American writers who who also write about flowers, but who write about it in a myriad of ways, like tell you that, at least teaches us that like there's so many entry points into writing, and that you could engage with your history, your familial history, a larger social history in many ways, and it doesn't necessarily look like this really like traditional narrative account. It can you can write like Leung Lee, you can write like Mang Mi Kim, you can have different predecessors that are not necessarily even Asian American, that you claim as your own. And I think that's like a really beautiful freedom to have when you can identify that there are other writers that do things, that share history with you, but that do things differently. I think that opens up so many portals of just your own process.
Yeah, and one thing about audience that I find kind of compelling is in the first generation, or like when like I'm writing about Anna May Wong and how she was a token, right? There was like nobody else who was in her position. So she had to like bear a lot on her shoulders because she was the only one. And so she became like this representative of all. But I feel like so as a result, like the earlier generations may have been more tokenized, right? Like they might be the only Asian American writer in like a predominantly white space, so they're always kind of expected to perform like culture, like perform their culture basically to an audience of the majority or whatever, the white people. But I think one of the things that shifted is because I learned there are so many other Asian American writers. I don't have to like perform for people who don't understand me. I don't have to. Like for me, like I wrote this book primarily for people who know what it's like, what it feels like. So women of color, and I think about that when I think about audience, right? So it's like I don't necessarily have to explain myself, because I can write for people who are like me.
Thank you for that. Yeah, another question?
I actually just read about your work in the New Yorker, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Sorry to say, to not even make the connection, at least. That's very exciting for me. What is it like to read about your own work and like an analysis of it, and like how to like intention and reception, relate?
It's really cool. Because it's like, whoa, you excavated all of that. I didn't think about that, but okay. That's often how it feels for writers. Like or like you have like once in a while you have like a really great reader who really who will like. This happened with my first book. Like there was a review that like likened my book to like being at like a concert. It was like this crazy mixed metaphor, and I was just like, whoa, that's great. not maybe not what I was going for, but yeah. So a lot, like this book came out maybe like a month ago, like exactly a month ago, maybe like plus or minus 2 days. So I think what's it like? I don't get tired of it because I'm always like curious. But what it is like that New Yorker thing that happened, like my dad went into a bookstore and like bought like 9 copies of it, and I thought that was really cute. Cause I feel like my dad doesn't really understand what I'm doing, but then he could see something like kind of concrete, and then like actually really soon after that, I came back from my like the first like my East Coast book tour part, and so then my family, like we went to China for a week to kind of celebrate my grandpa's 90th birthday, and like during that week, I had just never seen my dad like that. Like he was bringing that New Yorker, like to show my grandpa. My grandpa doesn't know what the hell is a New Yorker. You know what I mean? Like my grandpa doesn't know, and he probably doesn't care. But then my dad would like start making lies. Like he would like make stuff up. He would be like, in 100 years, the New Yorker has never featured a Chinese poet. Like start making it up. Like he just like starts like inventing things, and he would just tell them to everybody, and they would all be like, oh, very impressive. And I'm like, oh, but you know they're all lies. So I guess that doesn't really answer your question, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Do we have any
Yeah, any
other questions? Oh.
So in China, so is a poet something special in China, just in the cultural sense?
Well,
Like ballet dancers in Russia, or like rock stars, you can't get an entire culture. So I'm just wondering, like, how do I know they're great Chinese poets, but like, how does poetry move in China?
well, that is a huge question, and I feel like I could probably spend the rest of my life trying to answer that question. But like I think poetry does play a huge role in at least like my parents, you know, the education, primary school education, they're always like kind of memorizing and reciting the great ancient poets, but obviously that has changed like throughout different eras, and like I probably can't get into all the different eras, but I would say it for me, I think it's more, at least in my experience, like I feel like poetry has become more prominent either like recently, or if you think about like the most prominent poetry in China might be like the ancient poets, right? Like Li Bai, like Du Fu, like that, those kind of poets. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yes.
just have a question. I'm thinking from sort of your recent nylon piece, and
Uh-huh.
so I was actually really curious about your outfit choice in terms of like how, because I'm thinking about like sort of vision again, and sort of what you're wanting other people to see in ways in which maybe they're altered in seeing. So I don't know if there was like a more,
Okay.
you just felt like you wanted to wear that.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, great question. Yeah, so I recently wrote an essay for Nylon about specifically about fashion, and also like anime Wong, and like back in 1936, that was the first time she ever went to China, and she completely, once she got to China, I think she just went to Hong Kong and Shanghai and like her dad's village, but when she got to China, she got a lot of like shit because because they had seen her movies, and it's like gives China a bad name, and she completely kind of changed her choices. Like it was the first time that she was in China, and then she kind of like saw for herself what the real China is like versus kind of these like images and these like stereotypes that she like kind of grew up with in America, and she changed her entire wardrobe. So she got a bunch of chi pao made in Shanghai, and then like before she was wearing a lot of like flapper outfits and stuff, and she kind of just changed her wardrobe, and like after that she only dressed in like Chinese clothes, like basically, and the chi pao back then meant something very different than it does right now. When we think of the chi pao, it's like ethnic dress and maybe like old, right? But at that time it was kind of like modernity. It represents like what like the modern Chinese woman, and so I think there was like deliberateness behind her choice, and so in my piece I also talked about being in Shanghai. I just came back from a residency in Shanghai. I was there for 6 months. I was staying in this crazy 5-star hotel, with like a bunch of other artists, and while I was there, I ended up buying like 3 qipao, and I was also buying clothes for my book tour. Like I was like I need to find like some good outfits, and one of the designers that I found was this label called Muxin. It's a Chinese, it's a really young Chinese woman who like runs this label, and she draws from a lot of like real myths and traditions and like context. Like she really researches the and she has like really elaborate names for her like collections, like Jade in the Snow, or like Chaos of the Mountains and the Seas, or it's like really cool. So this top is from her, like one of her collections, and also this jacket, which I don't know if any of you know about this White Rabbit candy, but this is like a White Rabbit candy jacket, and it says Da Tu Zai, which is like big rabbit baby, or like big rabbit child, and it I thought it really represented me because I was born in the year of the rabbit, and also like I'm a big rabbit child, and like this reminds me of like childhood when I used to like rot my teeth with these candies, with these like milk candies. So yeah, thank you for that question. I do get excited when I talk about like shoes and fashion stuff, and also I'm wearing fake Balenciagas from the fake market. In China, they are like unfortunately not waterproof.
There's another anecdote that like I found out that Sally, you almost became a fashion student at Otis College.
Yeah, I got in, but like my Asian parents were never gonna let me go to art school. So
But you have this really nice jacket instead, so it's all good.
yeah.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
talking with me today and reading, and I'm sure other folks have lots of questions for you too, but that they'll ask you during the signing. But could we just give Sally a round of applause?
Oh, thank you so much, Muriel. Thank you everyone for coming.
And let's thank Muriel.
Yes.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.